This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted to be joined by Eddie Hearn. Eddie, been a little while. How you doing?
Sorry, I've got a mic here and look like a complete bell end, but it's an echoey room. So I don't want anyone to complain about your sound, Rob, because I know I've read some comments about in interviews, not you, not just specifically you, but when the sound's off, people moan. So, hi guys.
You're all about consumer satisfaction.
Absolutely, you should know that by now.
Of course I do. Let's jump straight into it. This past weekend, Anthony Joshua lost his unified heavyweight titles against Oleksandr Usyk in emphatic fashion. Just your opening thoughts, really, on the fight.
Good fight. I mean, high level fight. You know, obviously you'd expect that between the two guys who were contesting it. I think that it's easy to say, isn't it? Yeah, Josh got his tactics wrong. Oh, disappointing performance, should have done that. But I keep saying, like, we have to give credit to the champion and respect for his performance, which was brilliant, you know? So, yes, Josh got the game plan wrong. He didn't do what he should have done, but he was fighting what is now, you know, pound for pound, 1, 2, probably 2. And it can happen. You can get beat. So I think spent time with him since and kicking himself because he knows what he should have done and he feels like he could have beaten him, like after sharing 12 rounds with him, but he didn't. And that's the result. So he credits Usyk. He thinks he's a great fighter. He just feels he could do a lot better. And obviously that'll be the aim when they meet again.
We'll come on to the rematch or talks of the rematch shortly. Just going back to the first Andy Ruiz fight, the nature of the loss in that fight, got caught with a shot high on the head. This was a very different loss to Oleksandr Usyk. More damaging loss for Anthony Joshua, more difficult to process? No.
I mean, this is honestly like people have been phoning me up saying, are you okay? Like, I'm honestly, like, losing to Usyk losing's never nice, but losing to Usyk and getting boxed by Usyk is, you have to just take it on the chin. The Ruiz defeat was just crushing in every way because obviously he went down, 5 times, you know, got stopped, but it was one of the biggest upsets in heavyweight history. And this was just, you got beat by a pound for pound number 2 or 1 in some people's eyes. So I think it's more a frustration that we would have liked to see it play out in a different way. Like, you know, if he would have done what I believe he could do, how would it have played out? And obviously, we'll never know at this moment in time. But always disappointing, you know. But as I said in the build-up, and we always knew, if he didn't get it right, he will get beat by Usyk because that's what he does. And again, it's not just a case of saying, well, you just should have gone out there and thrown hell to leather, and Usyk makes you do certain things. And obviously, in that situation, for some reason, he made AJ fight in a different way, difficult in a way that he shouldn't have. And I think AJ made the mistake of, he feels like, and I know, and this was what I was scared about, he felt like he could outbox Oleksandr Usyk, and people said he couldn't. And I watched it back actually this morning, a lot of it, in you know, in Mason's kind of up close stuff. And actually, obviously he got outboxed, but for 8 or 9 rounds, he was doing okay with that style still. And it's not his style. And that's where I think now, you know, I watched another one of your interviews and a lot of the trainers seem to be saying the same things, which is, that's not AJ. But the problem is, when you tell AJ that's not him, he almost wants to show you that he can do that as well. He can box. He's like, his improvements are like, if you imagine if he would have boxed to that style back when he boxed Dillian, for example, he would have lost every second of every round. But he's still technically not as good as Oleksandr Usyk, and that's the reality. And guess what? Usyk can't punch anywhere near as hard as Josh and doesn't throw combinations like Josh, but everyone's got their attributes. And a lot of people are saying, oh, he's stuck between styles and stuff like that. I don't think so. I just feel like, you know, he does need to revert at times back to what made him what he was. And obviously that is a style that could be Oleksandr Usyk. And the style that he adopted is one that nine times out of 10 and more doesn't beat Oleksandr Usyk.
You mentioned there that AJ kind of has, I guess what you're saying, sort of a hard-headedness when it comes to something like that, wants to be able to prove people, not necessarily prove people wrong, but if somebody says he can't do it, it kind of galvanizes him. Has the penny dropped now on the back of that performance? Will he change it now, or will he go in there and think, well, I can box better? There are certain things.
I don't think, Rob, you're going to see him go in and just Chisora style Usyk in the first, but he knows that he didn't box the way he should have or could have. He also, he stands firm when he says, I don't just think it's a case of going in there and being reckless, but I need to be 10 times more aggressive than I was. I need to back him up. I need to focus. He didn't, I saw an interview yesterday where Usyk said, like, hands up, he hurt me badly, and I went to space and came back as Elon Musk or something, another great Usyk quote. He didn't hit him. He hit him with a couple of backhands that were probably 30-40% of his power shots and a couple of decent body shots, but nothing. And I think AJ's frustrated because he's seeing that thinking, wow, because I could see Usyk was hurt, but he didn't hit him, anywhere near to the brutality of what he's capable of. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? You've still got to do it. But I think he appreciates. Before he learned to improve as a boxer, he was already unified world heavyweight champion, right? So, and he'd already beaten Vladimir Klitschko before he really learned the fundamentals, the true fundamentals of professional boxing. And I think sometimes you have to just simplify it and say, mate, look at where you got to by doing things as you were, with raw power and brutal combination punching. I said, and the great thing is you've added so many different dimensions to your game and your ability. But, we need that guy that's still there, 1,000,000%. But don't overthink things. That was always the danger. And he did overthink things. Unquestionably, I overthought things. Do this, watching that. This is what Usyk does. It's too much respect. Too much respect. And he's really, really kicking himself. I had 3 hours with him yesterday in person. And to you, if he was on this interview now, and people sometimes take this the wrong way, Rob, listen, it's sport, I'd take, good luck to Usyk. I was beaten by the better man. Don't worry. Ha, 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 ha. Mate, trust me when I say it's hurting. And good, it should hurt, because if it doesn't hurt, you don't want it. And the first thing I said to him, which I have to ask, is just want to make sure, obviously, like as soon as we got back to the change room, is, I'll do this in a rematch. This will be different. And as the dust settles, I have to ask him the question as we have a catch-up meeting. Do you want the rematch with Oleksandr Usyk? And he looked at me like he was going to strangle me. And he said, "Fucking right, I do." I said, I see Bob Arum's comments about stepping aside. He looked, honestly, like he was about to just jump over the table and chin me. It's like, this is everything now. We've been here before. It's another huge challenge for him. And he will be a different fighter in a rematch. Tough fight. Underdog. First time in his career. Exciting. But he's kicking himself. He's down in the dumps. And that's how it should feel after a defeat, to be honest.
Just going back to what you said there, I keep using the word hard-headedness. I know that's not what you necessarily said, but when it comes to picking a style to box Oleksandr Usyk, when the fight's not going your way, not kind of changing it on the fly, taking the immediate rematch, when a lot of people, look at that as a very, very dangerous fight. You just said yourself there as the underdog. Stylistically, Usyk was always going to be a tricky fight, and now he's won the fight well. You would imagine so, even more so for the rematch. Is there no part of anybody, either yourself, Rob McCracken, somebody within 258, that could potentially try and steer him away if they think that's the right idea?
No, no one does, for many different reasons. But most importantly, if all of us thought he shouldn't take the rematch, he would still take the rematch, because that's all he wants to do. And the main reasons that we take the rematch are, number one, we believe he can beat him. Number 2, we know he can do so much better than that. Number 3, it's a chance to win the unified World Heavyweight Championship. And number 4, sometimes you never ever get a shot back at these titles. And with politics and everything in boxing, everyone will try and freeze him out. And number 5, he don't want to have an easy fight or a 10-rounder to get a bit of confidence back. That's not where he's at in his career. And we keep going on about this incredible 12-fight run that I always go on about. Now it's 13. And it's Usyk again. So it's just a mad run of fights, but it's the only option, Rob. Not because we've got nowhere to go, but just because that's all we're interested in. To put him in any other fight, a 10-rounder or a warm, like he couldn't be less interested. He wants to go straight back to the jugular, straight into Oleksandr Usyk. And right now, you know, I'd like him to take the fight now because he's fuming, you know, and that's the mentality he's got to have going into this fight. Very difficult fight, but it's, you know, it's never been discussed any other fight. And to be honest, I would have thought that the comeback fight was better suited after the Andy Ruiz defeat, because mentally that was much more crushing. That was you know, very tough to take in that environment against that opponent. You know, this was, you can hold your hands up here and say, I didn't box great and he was brilliant. But
sorry to interrupt. I guess when I initially asked the question about Ruiz versus Usyk, I mean, the way I was going with it is AJ had Ruiz down, he had him hurt. I think you can kind of be forgiven. I think your old mate Shelley Finkel mentioned it. He said that it was a young fighter who went in for the kill, got caught with a shot and never quite recovered. Whereas the Usyk performance was a thoroughly comprehensive boxing lesson.
Not really. Not
you don't
really,
agree?
Rob. No. I mean, look, he outboxed him, but I keep going back to, you know, he was ahead on one card after 8 rounds. He was level on another. He was 1 round down in another. Now, I don't think he was ahead after 8 rounds, by the way, but I think it was close after 8 rounds. And I was sitting there thinking, bad start by AJ, but actually he's winning rounds. He's starting to catch him. He got stunned in the 9th round, couldn't see in the 9th round, and he lost every other round for you know, it's a comprehensive, for a solid win, like no arguments at all. But no, I mean, he got outboxed. Yeah. He hurt Usyk with very, very little, right? And I know that he could hurt him bad if he got his shots off and pressed the action, backed him up through combinations. So I don't sit here and go, well, he can't beat Usyk. Of course he can beat Usyk. And if you can beat Usyk, you have to take the rematch. With the Ruiz fight, Ruiz is not as good as Usyk, but it's the mental block of coming back after a defeat like that. When you go down 4 or 5 times and you're scrambling up in Madison Square Garden, that takes a huge amount mentally to return from. Trust me. When you get outboxed and you believe you got your tactics wrong, that's a lot easier to come back from because you believe you can get it right this time. And again, when I saw him yesterday, it wasn't like, oh, Usyk's, you know, he's not, I can't believe he beat me. Or it was just, I know I can beat him. I didn't feel, yes, I lost the fight, but I didn't feel in there that, you know, I was in danger or I was uncomfortable or I just got outboxed and he got outfoxed as well, really. But there's no fear of fighting Oleksandr Usyk again. He's just got to get it right. And if he gets it right, he will win the fight. And if he doesn't, he won't. The same thing will happen again.
Where are we with the rematch? Spoke to Alex Krasik yesterday. He said that AJ, pretty much in the ring, had basically said that he's taking the rematch clause. Where are we with that? What sort of timescale, venue?
I mean, realistically, with Usyk's cut and, you know, the schedule, I think we look now probably March time, something like that. A lot of work to be done on all kinds of points of where it's going to be and when the timing will be, etc. I think AJ would like it sooner rather than later. I think, like, everyone struggled a little bit with the activity in the pandemic, and AJ's had one fight or two fights in 2 years, really. I think he's never been as active as he should be, but obviously this has slowed everything down. But at the same time, you know, he's probably got a couple of niggles that he just needs to get right. And Usyk's got a really bad cut. He's now going to go around the world and parade his belts, as we've seen before. And AJ's going to get back to work. So yeah, springtime, I think. And, you know, we'll look at where, when, speak to Alex. I think Usyk will fancy the job. You know, he'll sit there and go, great, I'm going to make a fortune, and I've just beaten him, and I'm going to beat him again. So they're all happy. They're all on cloud nine at the moment. And then from our side, we're starting to get back. You know, we're hatching a plan to be victorious in a rematch.
If it's spring next year, does that effectively rule out the UK?
No, because I think I would go outdoors. I mean, I would certainly go outdoors in April. You know, we've done it before. The Klitschko fight was in April. You've got Millennium Stadium. I would like to do the fight back in the UK. You know, I'm sure they'd like to do the fight in Kiev. I don't have a problem with him looking at it at all. He said, I've got no problem going to Kiev. We'll look at the revenue that can be generated. Of course, UK would be our first choice. We've already had approaches from the Middle East to do the rematch out there. But Saturday was pretty special. I mean, I know we didn't get the win, but when I look back at the pictures, Jesus, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And that's AJ did that again, you know, and we're all beneficiaries of it, aren't we? You know, British boxing I'm talking about as a we all, because he's just changed the game up. It's just, we've never seen this before, and it's all down to him. All down. There's no one else that can do it like that in this country. And it felt, again, it hurt, but it felt really good to see that again, you know, and see that it still exists in boxing and it's still capable. We're still capable of doing that in boxing.
Yeah, when I spoke to Alex yesterday, I think he said the limitations are as long as it's on planet Earth. So it does rule out if you wanted to take it on one of the Virgin space
yes.
or what have you. But yeah, just staying with the rematch, if for argument's sake Anthony Joshua loses again, where does that put his career?
I think, you know, then again, he's a challenger, building himself back to a shot at the world title, you know, and although he's doing that now, he's got the rematch clause, so he has a straight shot back to become unified world heavyweight champion. I see AJ boxing for 4 or 5 years or however long he wants to stay in the game for. But you know, some people say, oh, does he still have the hunger anymore? Mate, anyone that knows Anthony Joshua, it's all he lives and breathes for is boxing. It's the only thing in his life. And I said the other day, it is a little bit sad maybe that's his whole life. And he's got so much more to give. But, you know, back-to-back defeats is never good. Back-to-back defeats to the pound-for-pound number 1 or 2. I just can't believe, Rob, how you lose to a fighter like Usyk, you know, and it's like the write-offs is unbelievable. Oh, he should just call it a day. Fucking hell. You know, you got a young, pretty much, young heavyweight who's just so hungry, still got improvements to make, coming off a defeat 8-4 or what, 7-5 or what, 9-3, whatever you want to call it, boxing quite poorly with a bad strategy, really. And it's just, yeah, pack it in, mate, pack it in. So he's hungrier than ever. He's got a huge task on his hands. I hope people support him because he's going for it. He's going for it again. And I promise you, he will do much, much, much better than that first attempt.
With regards to the rematch, obviously much has been made about the broadcast situation with Anthony Joshua. I'm assuming now that the fact that he lost, he's still out of contract with Sky Sports. Where does that rematch end up?
I mean, win or lose, he was out of contract with Sky Sports. Obviously, the rematch is much bigger than the first fight. We still, although Usyk to you and me, and you know, is a pound for pound great and a god, he's still building that international profile, which has now gone through the absolute roof. Now you've got 2 titans coming together that everybody knows. So the rematch is huge. And again, discussions, obviously Sky have been a great partner. The Zone will be chomping at the bit to get that rematch, other broadcasters as well. So it's not, again, that wasn't really part of our thought process pre-fight, and it's not post-fight because we've got too much on our plate thinking about how to improve, what to change, and how to win this fight, this rematch. But obviously, once the dates selected and the venue, we'll get together with 258 and AJ, and Alex Krasuk and those guys, and we'll select the broadcaster for that fight.
If, for argument's sake, Tyson Fury loses to Deontay Wilder, could you do that fight?
AJ against Deontay Wilder?
AJ against Fury.
Oh, right. No, he'll rematch Usyk. I mean, AJ can fight Fury any moment, right? I wish that they would have done it for Undisputed, but it's done for now. So those, in my opinion, those two will always fight. But, the winner of that fight's got to fight Dillian Whyte. So that's our focus. I mean, although Dillian Whyte, because he's really not like that, would have wanted AJ to win on Saturday night, and I know that for a fact, it's actually worked well in his favour because now there's no arguments that he won't be presented as mandatory challenger to the winner of that fight. And the legal case is ongoing with that. But the only thing really standing in the way of that decision was the threat of the undisputed fight, which is just not happening. So Dillian Whyte, although probably not thinking it at the time, that's benefited him Saturday night because there is absolutely no way he cannot be called as a mandatory challenger to the winner of that fight with what's going on behind the scenes. And it's very easy now for Maurizio and everybody to just finally end this argument, legal situation by saying, yes, the winner of Fury against Wilder, Dillian Whyte, is the mandatory. And so the winner of Wilder Fury will fight Dillian Whyte. AJ will fight Usyk. And then hopefully we still get an undisputed fight. Could be Dillian against AJ. Who knows? But the good news for the heavyweight division is the gutter of we don't get AJ Fury for the undisputed. Got some great fights coming up still. I mean, that was a great fight. I know it wasn't a toe-to-toe battle, but it was a really high-level heavyweight fight. And also you got Fury Wilder, then you've got Fury Whyte, which will be after that, or Wilder Whyte, then you've got AJ Usyk again. So, this is all over the period of 6 months. So, and you've got White Wilding.
I was just about to say,
which probably becomes more important than ever now, so, and that's a banana skin. So good times for the heavyweight division. Just hopefully we get a few W's.
Just going back to what you said about Bob Arum's comments, I actually spoke to Alex about that. I interviewed him after the interview with Bob Arum came out. He said that he wouldn't be interested in that anyway. He said that they've already started preparing for the rematch, Usyk versus Joshua 2 for early next year.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things on that is, number one is, I think Usyk right now, Usyk against Joshua rematch generates a lot more money than Usyk against Fury. So that's firstly what he's thinking about. And number two is he's thinking, as I said before, I've just beaten Joshua. No problem. Make a load of money. I can beat him again. And also, on the Fury side, we are absolutely all systems go on making sure Dillian Whyte gets, again, there's no reason to stand in the way of that mandatory being called now. So I'm very confident that WBC will do the right thing and we can put an end to this legal case and all move on. And it's not, I mean, one, it should have happened a while ago, but there is no way you cannot say that Dillian Whyte isn't mandatory for that fight. So let's just get on with it now.
Final one on AJ, and indeed the rest of the card. Howard Foster's scorecard. He gave the first 2 rounds to Anthony Joshua. The second round was a closer round. The first round was not close. Mm-hmm. You said yourself there that you felt that he lost the early rounds. Mm-hmm. We also saw some, let's say, questionable judging in the Campbell-Hatton fight, as well as the Maxime Prodan one was very, very strange. But yeah, going back to that Howard Foster scorecard, having it 4-2 to Anthony Joshua after 6 rounds, I couldn't see that. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
I didn't see that either. No. I thought he won the second round watching it back, but probably was 1 down or 2 down after 4 or whatever it was. I have to watch it back. But I mean, look, to be honest with you, I know this is one for another situation, but one of the issues we have is, don't forget there was a Ukrainian judge there as well. And I think, I will just get it up because, you know, it might take me 5 seconds, but when we talk about neutral judging, the British Boxing Board of Control will always insist on the referee and one judge. The problem is with that is when someone wants a neutral panel, which is very often the case, of course, in a mandatory fight especially, if you've got one British judge, you need one Ukrainian judge. So I trust actually the British Boxing Board of Control to be, and those judges to be impartial. But when you bring a Ukrainian judge over, you don't really know anything about the Ukrainian Boxing Federation. How impartial are they going to be? So then in the end, you get one Brit, one Ukrainian, and one neutral. I would prefer a neutral panel for fights of that size. And that counts even more with the Florian Marku fight, where an Italian judge scored the fight 99-91 to Prodan. Don't get me wrong, it was quite a close fight. Florian won the fight. But to give him 1 round is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Ukrainian judge had it 3-2 to Usyk after 5 rounds. But he gave Usyk the first 3 rounds. All right? Steve Weisfield, who is an outstanding judge.
Excellent judge, yeah.
All right. Here we go. So he had it all square after 2. And then he had Usyk winning the next 2 rounds. So he had it 3-1 to Usyk after 4 rounds. He then gave Joshua the next 2 rounds. So he had it all square after 6. Actually, wow, that's really interesting. So the Ukrainian judge, okay, and Steve Weisfield both had the fight all square after 6 rounds. And guess what? The Ukrainian judge, it was a 10-10 in round 8. So the Ukrainian judge had Usyk 1 round up. No, he had it all square. Yeah, the Ukrainian judge had it all square after 8 rounds. Right? Steve Weisfield had it all square after 8 rounds. And Howard Foster had AJ 5-3 up after 8 rounds. I disagree with that card. I don't disagree with the other cards, to be honest with you. No one had Usyk up after 8 rounds. The Ukrainian judge, right? The Ukrainian judge, let's just get this right. The Steve Weisfield, probably for me, top 3 judges in the world. So yeah, it was quite, but every judge gave Usyk the last 4 rounds. You know, and that changed every one of the scorecards. To be honest with you, totally fucking irrelevant, but I just thought I'd read them anyway. We love to discuss it, don't we? So, but I go back to after 8 rounds, you know, it was nip and tuck, and AJ just didn't do any. Like he really didn't do anything in the fight of anything notable. So we feel as a team, call us deluded or whatever you want. We feel, well, we know he can do so much better, and we believe he can win the fight. So we shall see next spring.
Just touching there on what I mentioned about Campbell Hatton, a very, very controversial referee scorecard in that fight against Sonny Martinez. Just want to know how you saw the fight first and foremost.
I haven't watched it back, and that's probably he hasn't watched it back. I felt like it would probably be a draw at the final bell, but nearly everybody thought Campbell Hatton lost the fight. So I have to go, like, again, without watching it back, you know, I have to probably go with the fact that people who are probably much better judges than me felt he lost the fight. So I think he was very lucky. He was extremely lucky to get the win. Thought he boxed poorly. He shouldn't have been that far up the card, to be honest with you. And that wasn't our decision. And Callum Smith should have been above him. And the thing is, Rob, I spoke to him the other day and I just said, look, a lot of people are saying that you should sort of fight off TV because there's too much pressure on you and you should box on some small hall shows and stuff like that. And he was like, no, like this is what the opportunity I've been given. This is how it is. I do think he should go earlier in the night. I mean, it was pretty full when he was fighting. It's not easy. But then someone else went, I feel sorry for Campbell Hatton. Why? He's getting an opportunity that most fighters would give their left testicle for. So you can't feel sorry for him. Yes, it is hard because he's in a hard sport anyway, and he's not got the experience to deal with these situations. But it is what it is. And if you speak to someone like Conor Benn, who was thrown in similar situations, he started better than Campbell Hatton, but he was still all over the place. You ask him about that stage and that experience he got in those first 5 or 6 fights, they made him the fighter he is now, and that helped build his mindset. So I said to Ricky and Matthew, I think you should just come out and rematch the kid. I don't think we want to be taking a step back from the level of that kind of opponent, to be honest with you, after being 4-0. Hold your hands up and say, okay, guys, if you felt I lost that fight, I'll rematch him straight away and I'll try and put it right in your mind. And he'll beat him. But, he didn't box well. Big crowd, small crowd, whatever. He didn't box well. He can do so much better. He's performing in the gym, he's performing sparring, but he's not boxing, well, certainly Saturday, to his ability, which is still a novice. That decision obviously going back to Florian Marcu with the Italian judge, and it was a good learning fight for Florian, and we'll take him now. I think we're going to do something in Albania, if you fancy it, Rob. Yeah, I mean, he's got huge support there, huge support, and he's got an old existing fight that he has to tick off with Boxer on the undercard of one of their tournaments. I think he'll just have a 6-round run out, and then we want to just go straight to Albania and just have a bit of fun over there. I've never been to Albania. I hope they like me there.
Find some secret Eddie Hearn fans.
Really, really good performance from Callum Smith. Really good performance. I mean, thank God Lenin Castillo's okay, because that was one of the worst knockouts I've ever seen. But how strong did he look? For a long time, you see him on the scales at 12 stone thinking, how do you do that? And when he weighed in on Friday, he looked happy. And I think he's a real threat to the division. Akoli breezed through Prasovic, who, definitely shouldn't have been world number 1, but he was the mandatory that was called. And now he must go straight into unifications.
What unification are you looking at? He wants Myris Bradis. Bradis is now staying at cruiserweight. Am I right in saying that Bradis is still fighting man, isn't he, Arthur Man?
October 16. Yeah. So 3 weeks, 2 weeks this Saturday. Bradis is the man in the division, really. But Goulamarian's reached out. Makabu's reached out. I'd like to see Lawrence try and pick them all up real quick. There's nothing. They've all got fights coming up, and some of them have got mandatories, but there's nothing really stopping back-to-back unifications, because he's going to go to heavyweight, and he's going to be a nightmare wherever he fights. So I just feel that it would be a shame to not see him unify the division, because I don't see any of those 3 beating him, quite frankly. I think he stops all of them. Is
Goulamarian still boxing Egorov?
Yes. In a mandatory defence. We're probably doing that fight, actually. It looks like end of November.
Okay, good stuff. Right, moving on to next weekend. We'll start with, of course, your show, Smith versus Fowler, really kind of crept up on everybody. But I think it's fair to say that it's one of the best cards that you've done. I think I'm very much looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be my triumphant return to covering shows.
Oh,
I know you've missed me. So yeah, a fantastic fight at the top of the bill and right the way down the card.
just, you know, I know the problem is because I say it's one of the best cards I've ever done, virtually every other show. Probably when I say it's one of the best cards I've ever done, people just go, he's saying it again. But it's one of the best cards I've ever done. It's the best show I've ever done in Liverpool, by far. I mean, when you break down the card, Smith-Fowler, just a brilliant, brilliant fight. Such great narrative. Obviously, two fighters from Liverpool. One guy trying to break onto the world scene, one trying to protect his position as a world-class fighter. Cheeseman against Williamson for the British title is just a brilliant fight. Ted's never in a bad fight, and Williamson always, you know, comes to fight. Another fight at 154 between Kieran Conway and JJ Metcalf. Got Shannon Courtney defending her world title against American Jamie Mitchell. You got Solomon Dakers against Sokolowski. And of course, you got Luke Willis against Ryland Charlton. I mean, it's absolutely rammed. And the main event's going to be a brilliant fight. I think Fowler's been quite quiet in this build-up, and I think that's probably under the instructions of Shane, knowing Shane, and probably brightly so, because when he boxed Fitzgerald, he was out there every day on social media, and it does drain you and have an effect on you. And his silence didn't worry me, but sometimes silence can be a sign of lack of confidence, actually. Anyway, I went down Shane's gym the other day. He's so confident, right? And he looks so strong. He's had brilliant sparring for this camp. And I think he's going to peak at the perfect time as well. And he really surprised me with his bullish nature for this fight. Beefy, full of confidence, right? Sees no way, really, Fowler can beat him. He has started dropping a few things into interviews now, which is quite interesting, where he talks about the first half of the fight is going to be brutal, and he expects. And so he's obviously giving Fowler some credit in that respect, but he feels he's just going to be too experienced. He's going to come on down the home straight, and he's going to stop him. But I'll tell you what, this is going to be an absolute war, and there is nothing like a Liverpool fight night, especially when two Scousers are going at it. I just love the city. I love the people, the hotel, the whole setup, the arena. I'm buzzing for next week. The presser, the weigh-ins are packed, and I can't wait. So it's kind of got me through a little bit, the disappointment of the last few days, knowing that obviously we've got Milan this Friday, but really the one that I can't wait for is next Saturday in Liverpool.
Just picking up on what you said there, Eddie, about the last few days. We did an interview in Saudi after the day after AJ Ruiz 2, and you were very open and honest about kind of the impact and effect that Joshua Ruiz 1 had on you. I'm guessing, you know, experience and what have you, you've not taken it as hard, considering how hard you took the first Joshua Ruiz fight?
Nowhere near as hard, really, because I'm aware of how good Usyk is. And like, I was probably, I say naive's the wrong word, but you just become wiser, don't you? And I think that the Ruiz defeat was just like, we were naive then to the point that we thought AJ was unbeatable. So when there's 3.5 weeks or 4 weeks to go and Jarrell Miller pops positive, it's like, okay, you know, we just fight Ruiz, easy done, you know, and we'll beat him easy. And it was like, what? After I just couldn't process what had happened. So this was just like, got beat by the better man on the night and just have to take it on the chin. But gutted, you know, didn't sleep great on Saturday night. Pretty tired now, but you got to move forward, haven't you? And you got to improve, and you got to come back. And the reality is, we get another bite of the cherry. So AJ has a chance next spring to become bigger than ever and to become unified heavyweight world champion again. So that's now the new focus and drive. And the manner of the defeats, Rob, as I talked about earlier, very different. I know that he got outboxed on Saturday, but you know, New York was just wild. So we move, as the kids say.
We do. We move on to next weekend in Las Vegas. Wilder Fury 3. It feels like we've been waiting around forever for it because we have. Does the winner of that fight kind of solidify their status as the number one heavyweight in the world?
I mean, I can never win with this question, but I feel like Usyk's the number one heavyweight because I believe Joshua was the number one heavyweight in the world. So if you beat him, you are. But look, Fury's a very good heavyweight. I just feel that the Wilder win doesn't mean that you're number one heavyweight in the world because I just don't. I'm not saying I don't rate Deontay Wilder, but he's never beaten anyone of any note. He's never beaten a top 5 heavyweight. So how do you class him as a top 5? I don't know. So, but there's all to play for. I mean, I think that Tyson Fury don't look ready, in my opinion, but I still think he'll win comfortably. But it does throw in the likelihood of a mistake happening. And if you make a mistake against Deontay Wilder, it can cost you the fight. He's very dangerous. So look, who knows? I don't see him losing a round, but it doesn't really matter. One mistake and it could be over. So I hope it, and genuinely, I hope he wins because I want the WBC to order the mandatory for Fury White.
Do you accept now, on the back of the loss to Oleksandr Usyk, that if a potential Joshua Fury fight rears its head in the future, that Joshua doesn't bring the same bargaining chip to the table as before?
No. He's on such a bigger level commercially than Tyson Fury. No, even now, he's by far the biggest draw in heavyweight boxing. I mean, especially in the UK. So, no, I mean, absolutely not. And even Tyson, to be fair, even Tyson Fury knows that and his team know that. So, but, if he beats Usyk, he goes to another level and he's coming off the back of a defeat. But he's still by far the biggest draw in the division. You see that on Saturday. Look at the pictures. See any of the other guys trying to produce images and scenes like that in the UK. Impossible. Look at Fury Wilder. They're giving away tickets. They're reducing prices. And that's one of the biggest fights out there, really.
He did do a $20 million gate for the rematch.
For the rematch, yeah. What about this time around? Won't do a $5 million gate. Mainly because also there's no Brits travelling. So in America, that fight's it's not a big fight.
How many pay-per-view buys do you think that fight does next week?
In America, somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000.
So I think the released figures were about 850, not including
the second fight.
For the second fight, yeah. You think
it does that? I'm not sure it did that, man. But I don't. There's zero buzz, Rob, and I'm not just saying that. There is zero buzz for the fight, because he just absolutely destroyed him in the second fight, and he beat him easy in the first fight as well. But the second fight looked like a mismatch. So, I just don't see it doing the numbers, and someone's going to have egg on their face. I don't know what the deal is, but it ain't going to look pretty when a balance sheet hits.
All right, I'd appreciate your time. So I'm going to make the last few questions quick. Canelo Alvarez, Caleb Plant. Haven't spoken to you since. To tell you what, Eddie, do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the first time when Amir Khan and Phil LaGreco had their head-to-head, and everybody blamed you afterwards and said, "Oh, how is with Eddie Hearn?" See, Canelo's been mild-mannered his whole career. He does a few fights with you, and now he's punching people in face-offs.
I know. Do you know what? Genuinely, quite a few people messaged me that. As I said to people, like in the build-up to that fight, don't fuck with Canelo Alvarez. Like, you can't swing a punch at Canelo Alvarez and expect him just to, push. Like, he's a fighter. So, we don't want to see that too much, but he's got to do what he's got to do. And obviously, it's a huge help for the fight, and I see him winning the fight comfortably.
Yeah, it's probably given a few extra buys to Showtime pay-per-view.
For sure.
What do you make of the comments from Caleb Plant aimed at Eddie Reynoso, Canelo Alvarez?
I felt that the whole thing was a bit of a setup. Brian Custer was reading out tweets that Caleb Plant had written that just seemed like a bit of a character assassination. But he's got his opinions. We'll see what that stands for on November 6th.
What's your opinion on the situation with regarding Eddie Reynoso's camp? with
I think
the likes of Oscar Valdez, with the fentanyl, Canelo Alvarez in the past with the clenbuterol. I think Luis Neri was, but I don't think was part of the camp at the time, but he joined the camp afterwards. What's your viewpoint? I mean, you've said yourself in years gone by in interviews surrounding that camp about the alleged use of performance enhancing drugs. Canelo Alvarez, of course, has faced and served a 6-month ban. You know Eddie Reynoso. I know you have a working relationship.
That's why it's difficult for me, Rob, because I know those guys, and it's hard. You know, I know what boxing means to them, and I know how much they love the sport. So, I'm on their side effectively, and it's not because you're just saying that because you're working with them, you don't upset them. I know them, and I believe in their love for the sport and their intention for the sport of boxing. And I think, Eddie made some comments about he's not a nutritionist. He doesn't work. They've got separate nutritionists on that side with Valdez and stuff like that. I don't know the ins and outs, but all I can tell you is my opinion of knowing those guys. And people will disagree with me, agree with me, whatever. But I'll just tell you, I know those guys. And Eddie Reynoso is a boxing guy through and through. And that's my opinion.
There will be people who watch us who do say that, though, Eddie, that say that you are kind of not really sitting on the fence. You're sitting on that side of the fence because you do have the working relationship with them. You obviously have Julio Cesar Martinez, who was the other person for the clenbuterol. So do you see
not
that
trained by Eddie Reynoso, by the way, but
he's managed by Eddie Reynoso.
Yeah.
But do you see that viewpoint from people, how they would see that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. But I can just tell you my opinion, and knowing those people, I can see how people will have those opinions, but I could just tell you that I know these people now personally, and I've been around them, and that's not my belief of the situation.
Can you see yourself working with Canelo after the Plant fight?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I didn't want to get involved in this because I knew I probably wouldn't be able to do the deal with PBC. So when we talked about it, Eddie Reynoso, I said, look, you go through those discussions. They want me on the team. They want me there. They want me to be his guy. But I don't want to, this is his dream to be undisputed. So I'll be there to support. After the fight, we'll sit down and we'll look at the opportunities. And I believe we'll work together for a long time.
What have you done to annoy Oscar De La Hoya?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I know.
It was a bit weird, wasn't it? He was having his face massaged. And
I mean, look, some people messaging me last night saying, reply, tweeting this, tweeting that. Like, what are you going to say? And it's sad. Like, I look at it, and although he's having a pop at me, I find it quite sad. And I just want him to get help, and I think I'm not going to start going backwards and forwards because I respect the guy. He's an unbelievable fighter. He's a legend of the sport, but it's just sad to see. So let him, I'm not going to go backwards and forwards. I hope he can, sort himself out, and that's that.
All right, final question, final questions on DAZN USA. What have you got coming up? I understand Demetrius Andrade is going to return to action in November. What can you tell me about the DAZN USA schedule?
So we have, of course, Mikey Garcia coming out October 16th with 2 other world title fights. We've got a world championship quadruple header, which we will be announcing shortly, which will include Demetrius Andrade and most likely Jason Quigley for the shot at the title. We have the ongoing situation with Lopez and Kambosos, which obviously we're the next bidder for if that defaults to us, which we'd love to.
What do you think happens with that, Eddie?
I mean, who knows? The whole thing is absolute madness. But we're obviously waiting for the call. And then we've got Devin Haney, who, we'd love to make against Jojo Diaz, but will be in a big fight in December. So a busy end of the year coming in the US, and lots to announce in the UK as well.
The Devin Haney situation, you've been trying to make Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia. You've been telling me that you've wanted to make that fight for the last couple of years. It looks as though the WBC ordered Ryan Garcia and Jojo Diaz. How is that going to happen? What's going to happen here?
How is that happening full stop? I mean, you've got 2 guys that have won final eliminators, both ducked Devin Haney, and then you've ordered them to fight each other instead. It's bizarre. But listen, we've got to do what we got to do. I think Golden Boy are telling Jojo Diaz that he'll fight Devin Haney, so Ryan Garcia this year. I don't believe that. So let's see. But we have to make plans. We're speaking to a number of opponents for Devin, and he will fight in December. What
opponents, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't want to say because, I don't want to kill a deal.
Maxi Hughes?
He's not being discussed, but you know, he's IBO world champion. If anyone was going to get a shot outside of the obvious, I'd be happy for him to get it, but he's not on the front running list right now.
Emmanuel Tago, Lee Selby, any of those guys?
No, neither of them.
Okay. All right, Eddie, well, I've taken up
All
enough
right.
of your time. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing
Cheers,
Social.
guys. Cheers,
I'll see
mate.
you in
Take care.
Liverpool.
Bye, mate. Bye.